Look, I'm just a geologist. I like rocks. I love rocks.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Geology Flannelcast. My name is Steve.
Hey, everyone. I'm Chris.
Salutations. I am Jesse.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah.
I like it. So today, Chris, what are we going to be talking about?
Talk about glaciers. It's it's winter time, and you guys just got hit with a pretty gnarly snowstorm, and I think it's kind of fitting. And plus, our last topic we did a trilogy on coal, so I think if we did another coal episode, people start like trying to strangle us.
Yes.
So we talked about coal contributes to climate change and the warming of the climate, and let's go the opposite way. Let's cool things down a little bit.
Well, coal, the formation of coal leads to ice ages.
Pulling all the carbon out of the atmosphere.
All the carbon, and then you bury it so it doesn't get put back up. So,
all right. And that's all we're going to talk about with coal today. We're done with coal. Actually, I don't even want to talk about any more coal.
Got so many more things. There's like 8 things. I was like, I forgot to mention that and that and that.
Oh, man.
But I'll save it. I'll just mention it to myself when I brush my teeth tonight.
Well, if we get enough people to go to patreon.com and become Patreon members, maybe we can quit our full-time jobs and then just record ourselves all day, every day, talking about,
I think,
essentially the tabs that are open on Jesse's phone.
Yeah, I'll do 2 hours daily called the Coal Cast.
Please stop saying the word coal.
It's
pretty good.
Coal is the new outer space. Here. I'm not going to be allowed to talk about it ever again.
Oh, no, but we do have a chilling new episode on glaciers. This is our episode 80.
80.
So, yeah, 80. Believe it. So if you like this and, it's, what is it? Tell a loved one February, right? Please check us out at www.geologyflannelcast.com, and you can check out all of our old episodes. I would start with the newest and go backwards. Some of our older ones, we
were figuring it out,
We were kids.
It's a learning process,
Exactly. We were kids with zero budget. Now we're adults with slightly less than zero budget.
Yeah.
Slightly more than zero budget, I should say.
I would even argue that we're even adults. So, but that's
that too could be argued. Yes.
Wow.
But yeah, so glaciers, right?
Glaciers.
Just big snow drifts, right? From when they plow 95. Is that what it is?
Something like that. Well, so you gotta do some work before you can get to a glacier, right? So the definition of a glacier is it's a body of moving ice. A lot of people don't realize that glaciers are moving, and gravity's kind of just pulling them downhill. They don't move fast. You're not gonna, it's not like you can see this thing like flying down the hillside.
Picturing Jesse running on a glacier like a treadmill. It's like constantly moving under his feet.
That's about the speed I run. It would keep up.
All right. So the body of ice, it's a moving body of ice because it's flowing downhill. It moves very slowly. It's been formed on land by compaction and the recrystallization of snow. So we gotta do some stuff to kind of change the snow. And glacial ice is you kind of metamorphose the snow, or it goes through the process of this. You accumulate the snow, and it goes through the process of snow metamorphism. So
you basically squish it.
Basically, you squeeze the crap out of this thing. Yeah. That's pretty much it. But first, you need the right climate. Right now, you're probably not going to get glaciers forming on the equator anywhere, unless you're at like really, really high altitude somewhere. But it needs to be cold, right? And the trick is, you want to have more snow accumulation than you have melt every year, right? Now, this isn't saying that you can't. It's just snow piling on top of snow and piling on top of snow. Like you can get lots of snow building up in the winter, and then in the summertime, the trick is you just don't have as much melt as you had snow accumulation. And over time, the snow fields start growing and growing and growing, and that will put you on track to become a glacier. So this is known as the mass balance, or also known as your glacial budget.
Ooh, I like it. Fiscal terms.
Kind of like if you're an accountant, you know about your debits and credits. Well, the glacial budget is all about gains and losses of snow.
Yeah, or the Gazinda and Gozada.
There you go. That's very South Philly of you right there.
Thank you.
So I guess we should move into, so we're making this glacier. Let's talk about accumulation, right? So the climate's a little bit colder. Your summers are colder. You're not melting all of your winter snow. And so you're accumulating snow. You're adding snow, ice and snow to form this glacier. So it could be, you can get snow from just snowfalls, water freezing on the surface, avalanches coming in. It doesn't matter. You're just accumulating snow. All right. So that starts to happen. And then we should also talk about the process of ablation. You guys ever heard of this word, ablation?
Yeah, it's when you shoot lasers at stuff.
Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about it in a little bit of a different context.
No, yeah, it's a process of removing something.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
you can ablate something with a laser. You can just, I guess, ablate snow with the sun.
Yeah. So ablation is the process of removing snow and ice. And so this happens through melting, right? It's really easy to melt snow. Evaporation, wind erosion, sublimation. We'll get into the term sublimation in a second. We're getting some really, really big words here. And calving. Calving is kind of when you
have a baby cow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or it's when the glacier starts breaking off.
Ah, sorry, I was way off.
Yeah, well, it happens. Well, sublimation, we'll talk about this. We'll get more in depth in it, but the term sublimation is when a solid transforms directly into a gas and it totally skips the liquid phase.
That's my favorite phase transformation.
It really is.
Just by the way.
What's your second favorite phase transformation?
Freezing.
Right? Come on. Like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. What?
But all right, so sublimation, let me explain it this way. Have you ever had an ice cube tray, like an automatic ice maker in your freezer, right? And you go in to grab an ice cube, and some of the ice cubes are smaller than the other ones. Well, they all came out of the same ice cube size tray. How are these ones smaller? Because they actually sublimated. There's not like a pool of water at the bottom of your freezer. They actually evaporated off and went from that solid phase to the gas phase in your freezer. So if you ever open your freezer and you get a little like mist or fog that comes out of your freezer, that's actually your ice cubes sublimating, and that's why you get different size ice cubes. Those ice cubes went from yay big to yay big based on sublimation.
Crazy. Just
I like that. I assume metric measurement of yay big to yay big.
Oh yeah. That's a standard SI unit. System de Internacional.
So all right. So accumulation and ablation. Accumulation, we're gaining the snow and ice, and ablation, we're removing the snow and ice. All right. So let's just for the purpose of this example, let's kind of talk about alpine glaciers. We're on a mountain, a nice, beautiful mountain. Your higher elevations on the mountain are going to tend to receive more accumulation and less ablation, and then vice versa. The lower elevations are going to tend to have more ablation and less accumulation. And then the two areas, they kind of trend into each other until you hit what's known as the equilibrium line. And this is where your accumulation equals ablation. So that's kind of just the kind of general idea. So we're gaining snow and ice in higher elevations, and we're losing it in lower elevations. And then somewhere in the middle, there's an area where it's like a net zero change. So we got to make this snow into ice. So snow has a density of about 0.05 to 0.07 grams per cubic centimeter. So we got to make that a little bit more dense. All right. Not a little bit more dense, way more dense. This snow is just too fluffy. All right. We need to make this into dense ice. So what happens is over time, as snow starts building, it's collecting, and it starts building up and building up and building up. After about a year, your snow starts to become granular and it increases in density. And we call this firn. So it's like these little snow granules. All right. So now we're getting closer to getting it to turn to ice. Now, firn has a density that's a lot more than snow. Firn has we said snow was between 0.05 and 0.07 grams per cubic centimeter.
Mm-hmm.
Firn's going to be 0.41 to 0.8 grams per cubic centimeter. So much, much, much denser. But so what ends up happening is your firn, like the stuff, is denser than snow, right? It's kind of like in the middle between snow and ice, but it's still permeable, right? And water can still percolate through. So this isn't like the glacier ice that we're looking for, that you see in the mountains. It's like, super majestic. We got to get rid of this pore space still. Okay. We need to make this thing like solid ice. So what we do to transform the snow into ice, we take the process of sublimation starts to occur. All right. And like Steve explained, your solid is transforming from gas right to a solid. Oh, that's totally backwards.
From solid right to a gas.
Thank you. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. From solid to a gas. Thank you. Totally skips the liquid phase. And so what happens is then that water vapor condenses and it refreezes. All right. And when it condenses, you can that water may start to percolate down. And basically what's going to end up happening is this is going to start clogging up your pore space. All right. And this process of sublimation is going to lead to more compaction, and that will eventually get you to the glacier ice density that we're looking for, right? Like the true glacier ice, which has a density of about 0.85 to 0.9 grams per cubic centimeter. And so there you go. That's the process of how you need to get that's kind of like a quick process, a quick explanation on what we need to do to get this snow to turn into glacier ice. So now with the glaciers, we got two types. All right. There's valley glaciers and there's ice sheets. So valley glaciers are like the stuff that you see in the mountains. These are like your Alpine glaciers. They're these long glaciers, and they're long and narrow glaciers, and they're going to be confined by valley walls in your Alpine environment. Now, keep in mind, all this stuff, like I had mentioned earlier, is moving downhill.
Yeah, just flowing downhill, just slow, like molasses.
It's interesting you call them valley glaciers because I call them mountain glaciers.
Oh,
well, they're also Alpine glaciers. I've called them Alpine glaciers.
Al who?
Alpine.
Oh, got it.
Lives in Europe.
Yeah,
skis.
He grows a lot of ferns. I don't know.
Where's I don't know.
Yeah.
This is all I bring. This is it.
This is good. So there's your valley glaciers, or stuff in your Alpine environment, and then there's ice sheets. Now these glaciers aren't confined by valley walls, and it's just kind of ice that flows outward from a central dome. So this is kind of like the ice sheets. This is what we see in Antarctica and Greenland, kind of, and they're huge. That's however big,
So
not as huge as they used to be.
Yeah.
Well,
basically, so two things. One, there was a study out that every year we lose about 1.2 trillion tons of ice.
What?
Yeah.
But when it comes to ice sheets, and I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but you said Greenland and Antarctica. So there's one on Greenland and there's two on Antarctica, and that's it. There's only 3 in the entire world.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And if you want to listen to more about Greenland, episode 27 of the Geology Flannelcast, we talk all about Greenland's ice sheet.
What year was that?
2015, 6 years ago.
Oh yeah. Well, how about that?
Give or take August 2nd, I think. I don't know if that's when we posted it or when we recorded it, but either way.
The file was created on August 3rd, 2015. So
yeah.
Wow. Geez, time flies when you're having fun. Look at that. Who would have thought nearly what's that? About 53 episodes later. Here we go. Revisiting
well, yeah, we're talking about broad glaciers in general.
Yes. Yeah, we're not that was more of a I guess in-depth kind of episode there. So so we can move on to some glacial features. These are always fun to talk about, kind of some geomorphology here. We have crevasses, and some people say crevices. I like saying crevasses.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Crevasse.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be a glacial explorer, I don't want to die in a crevice. I'm going to die in a crevasse.
Yeah.
Doesn't it just sound so much more like
romanticized?
I was going to say romantic, but I didn't want to say romantic. Yeah. Right.
But if you're on a glacier, you're falling into
exactly.
Yeah. If you're falling into a crevice, you're.
Yeah. Why don't we just call them like stretch marks? Like
it just sounds dirty, like
something awful.
Stretch marks.
These glacier stretch marks.
Oh man, I was watching a YouTube video the other day of this guy who's on a journey climbing Everest, and the portion of the climb where they put the ladders down and you have to traverse across the crevasses.
No, thank you.
A homeboy fell off the ladder, right? And
did he make it?
They had a rope kind of like it was about like chest high, and he was clipped into it, but you just kind of saw him like leaning to the side like timber, and then falls off the ladder and just kind of hanging there on this rope in between one of these crevasses, and it didn't look like he was having fun. Let's just leave it at that. I think he might have had better days than that.
Have you seen the videos of like the Sherpas when they set the ladders? Holy cannoli. Those guys are like...
The Sherpas are the real heroes. They're the ones like...
They are.
Yeah, those guys, they don't mess around. Yeah. They bring the ladder, and I just imagine you just like drop it over the crevasse and
I'm
set it down.
I don't remember. I remember watching a while ago like a documentary on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're like...
They've got to carry a ladder up Mount Everest. How about that?
Not to the top.
I understand, but still,
at the bottom.
I don't like carrying a ladder out back.
But they're scurrying up there to set oxygen and set food, and they're up and back and up and back and up and back.
Yeah, they're ones setting the lines up there. Doing all the rope rigging on the way up. Like that's.
And I tell you what, I'm back on campus teaching for the first time in a while this spring, and I went from the lecture hall up to my office, and it was 4 floors, and I was winded.
Oh, good. I'm glad you were too, because I was like, this is bad. This is real bad.
Like I haven't done 4 stories.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
so
it makes me feel a little bit
my
better.
Next point, Jesse's investing in a Stairmaster for his next piece of workout equipment.
Because I am planning an ascent of Everest.
There you go.
I'm going to go for K2. I want something that's technically challenging.
Oh, they just did the first winter ascent of K2.
Yeah.
It's just done this year. Never been done before.
That's a hard mountain.
I had a teacher in college. He was training he was going to go to Everest. He wasn't going to climb it, but he was just going to go to base camp. And so they told him to start doing lots of stairs, go up and down, up and down. And then so he was telling us a story, and he goes, and that's how I got my first heart attack.
Jeez. Yeah. No bueno.
Yeah. Oh.
All right. So crevasses.
Let's go back to these crevasses.
Yeah.
What Steve likes to call glacial stretch marks. So, all right. So this is going to be interesting trying to explain these features where this is going to be one of those things where if I could show you a picture of these things, it would take, 10 seconds to explain them.
I'm pretty sure my terminology explains it.
Well, that's what we're going to try to do. We are masters of the long lost form of radio here. This is just modern radio we're doing.
No, I'm telling you, stretch marks. That's what it is. That's what it looks like. That's what it is. Done.
Ice crack. Ice cracks.
Yeah, it's from like the stretching of the. It's almost like they're stretch marks. If somebody would have just said, the ice cracks up, right? And the ice is being pulled downhill, and it starts to create these cracks. But the cracks are perpendicular to the direction that the ice is being pulled, right? So, like, say if downhill was to the south, the cracks would be oriented east-west.
Mm-hmm. Just like stretch marks.
Just like stretch marks. Okay. Now, congratulations, everyone. You will never view glacial crevasses the same way ever again. You can thank Steve Peterson.
You're welcome.
Contact him at steve@geologyflannelcast.com and send all of your fan mail that way.
There you go.
How he ruined your view of crevasses.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
we also have other long linear features.
Hey, speaking of linear features,
trying to keep us on task.
What if we wanted to describe linear features on a Microsoft Word document?
Oh,
Yeah.
How would we do that?
Well, I don't know anything on Microsoft Word. If only there was somebody that could help us.
That's right. The formattingformula.com or YouTube/C/formatting formula if you'd like to teach yourself. I honestly was just talking to the formatting formula this week again.
Of course you were.
Seriously. They're like a gigantic crutch for me. Like, I know I don't. It's almost getting to the point of embarrassment, but I often have to look up some of these old files in this old database, and in this old database, everything was all caps. So I have to copy and paste some of these notes into documents, and when I copy and paste it, it's in all caps. And I'm like, oh.
Who writes stuff in all caps? That's what
I think that's just the way this program was from like the 90s.
Were they like very angry? Like,
no,
this groundwater well is
exactly. So first of all, like Control A will select everything in the document, and then it's Shift F3 changes everything from either caps to no caps or all caps.
Okay, but you're saying
what I'm saying is that anyway, the formatting formula, when I called them up, they're like, oh, this is what you have to do. You have to do Control A, Shift F5 or Shift F3, and then Shift F4 will just repeat the same. Like, I was like, what? Like, this is amazing. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They know all the shortcuts. They know all the tricks. They know they just know it. So any of your Word documenting needs, from table of contents to I don't know, to just selecting all, something as simple as that. Formattingformula.com and YouTube/C/formula formatting formula. Excuse me. They have all these videos that teach you how to do it yourself. So please check them out. And, even more importantly, just go check them out on YouTube and then write in the comments like, oh, the Geology Flannelcast saved my life with this.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that
suggestion.
We're going to start a spin-off podcast called How the Geology Flannelcast Saved My Life.
But seriously, formattingformula.com, cannot say enough good things about them. Check them out. And we appreciate you.
So, speaking of stretch marks and long linear features,
can we stop saying stretch marks? It's really making me uncomfortable.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ice is stretchy, man. It's
just striations.
I guess it's just striations. There you go.
Yeah.
Ice is brittle. That's why it cracks.
That's why it cracks. Yes. You know what? You're right. Ice. I don't know what kind of ice I'm looking at, but ice is not stretchy.
Yeah. So striations are linear scratches on the underlying rock. Basically, glaciers. Yes. Is it ice? Is it flowing? But it also contains other little tiny rocks. It also is somewhat hard itself. It also has tons and tons of weight and pressure on top of it. So all this combined, you're going to leave some scrapes. Essentially, that's what they are.
It's like the glaciers just scratching the rock below it.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you scrape, sometimes, especially because it like picks up material as it's sort of moving along. If it picks up, especially if it's got a lot of finer grain stuff like sand or sandstone or something, it can really scrape down the rock and actually leave a polish that it scrapes it so much that it buffs out imperfections on the bedrock.
Yeah, my granite countertops are only polished by Glacier.
That's
the only way I can live.
Yeah.
We did a whole Flannelcast episode on granite countertops. Steve, do you have a true granite countertop, or do you have one of these like granite countertops?
Did we not talk about glacially polished granite countertops?
we did not cover glacially polished granite countertops. Yeah,
we could. That's a high-end luxury product. We could sell
exactly.
Subset of people, small
subset
of
super ultra rich geology fans.
Enthusiasts.
Yeah, we're really kind of pigeonholing ourselves in that.
Hey, whatever. But also what's cool about these striations too is, they start at a particular point, and then as the grinding occurs, the grinder, I guess the grinder, eventually wears out. So you can actually see like they start thicker and deeper, these scratches, and then they get thinner and taper off as so you can actually tell directionality of which way the glacier was flowing.
And this is
time of the scraping.
This is what this was the sort of one of the main lines of evidence that friend of the podcast, I assume would have been a friend of the podcast, Alfie Vegs.
Yeah.
Alfred Wegener used.
I'm pretty sure Alfred Wegener would have been like a diamond tiered Patreon.
I think so.
Of this podcast, so. At least.
But what he, using the glacial evidence, you find evidence of striations, say in South America and Africa and Australia. And when you look at them in their present day orientation, they're just all over the place. But when you put the continents back together into Pangea, they make an ice sheet with like a central dome, and they're all flowing in the proper directions. So shout out to Alfred Wegener and Glaciers. He died on an ice sheet. So they say they found his body, but I'm going to be
I heard they never found his body.
I didn't.
No, it just came up recently that they think they may have found.
Yeah, someone was saying. I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll be an Alfred Wegener truther.
Did we ever do a podcast on Alfred Wegener?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
In my head, I meld him together with
our very
Cornelius.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna let you finish this thought.
He's just out there with like a pickaxe. That's peppermint. That's pure. That's just looking the ice.
Yukon Cornelius or Don Cornelius?
No, Yukon Cornelius.
I thought you said Don Cornelius. I'm like, how are you bringing this back to Soul Train?
No. Maybe he danced when he found striations or something. I don't know. I wasn't there in the 30s.
No, we in our very first episode, January 2014. So this would have been 7 years ago. We talked about plate tectonics, and we talked about Alfred Wegener.
Oh, we did. Okay.
So,
I remember that first podcast. That was Not the best one we did. We've gotten so much better over the years. But anyways, moving on.
Yeah.
So one thing that I don't think we've really even touched on this topic. I'm going off script here, guys. So just let me go with this. It's just
I just compared Alfred Wegener to Yukon Cornelius. That was
yeah, that was not in the outline.
That was so. It was very good. I appreciate that. The one thing that we should talk about is when these glaciers are moving, the sheer force behind them is just astonishing. They are one of the strongest forces in nature, one of the strongest erosive forces in nature. When these things are moving downhill, like the glacier does not care what's in the way. There's so much force that's involved in these things. They'll pick up boulders. They'll carve out mountain valleys.
Yeah, it's just like a bulldozer, just like
nature's bulldoze. Yeah, and when we get into moraines a little bit later, we'll talk about how they literally are bulldozers. But so we'll get at that. But there's just these things are just glaciers are huge, and you can get like these ice sheets. Not so much like the Alpine or the Valley glaciers, but like the ice sheets. These things are like miles deep. And they're enormous. So that's what I just wanted to kind of just push that point a little bit. But I guess one of the last things to talk about these glacial striations that we see in the rock. It's it's a line of evidence of glaciers. They were in the area, and they've since melted away. And they kind of scratched up the rock. The things that are causing these striations are usually just from sand that's associated with it, that's in the ice. And as that glacier is moving, just those little sand particles, those little sand grains are just kind of scratching up the surface of the rock underlying the glacier. So, all right. So next topic, it's these features we'll be talking about. You may, if you're not a geologist, you've probably never heard of these things before. They're called Roche Mutinae. And what Roche Mutinae are, it's an erosional surface. It's from glacial activity. And so I guess it's almost like an asymmetric. How would you guys describe like the feet? What this thing looks like? An asymmetric
it's almost like
lump,
like Dawson Lee side.
Yeah,
of
that's exactly what I was
so,
thinking. Yeah.
But again, if you haven't heard of Roche Mutinae, maybe you don't know what Dawson Lee mean either.
So it's like if you're walking up a very shallow hill, like a shallow slope, and then you come to a cliff.
Yeah, that's
shallow on one side, and then it's really steep on the other.
Yeah, and this actually happens a lot in nature. Like we're talking about with sand dunes, the glacier ice feature of Roche Mutinae, and sometimes it just has to do with like what side of your hill is facing north or south. Like one's going to see more erosion than any other side. So,
so they get their these things form as the glacier's moving. It kind of erodes the rock surface underlying the glacier down, and you can actually tell the direction that the ice is moving, and just by looking at the geometry of it, the ice tends to come up the shallow end, and so you see basically the ice is moving in the opposite direction of the dip of the shallow end. Is that a good way to explain it?
No, no, you had it right the first time. It's essentially traveling up the shallow end.
It's traveling up the shallow end,
dropping off the steep end.
Yeah. So I
no. I'm just saying the first time you explained it was pretty clear. The second time,
less clear.
Too many words.
Yes.
What's hard? If I had a picture, people would.
I understand. Maybe we can post some pictures on the website. So check us out at geologyflannelcast.com.
There's gonna be a lot of pictures with this one if we do that. So how did these things get their name? It's kind of an interesting name, huh? Well,
it
goes back to this.
One of my favorite stories.
This is one of your favorite stories?
Well, I mean, it's one of the it's sort of silly. So
it's very silly. I just put this in there because I got a fun fact about it. All right, so back in the 18th century, there was an Alpine explorer. His name was Horace Benedict de Saussure. There we go. He coined this term Roche Mutinae in 1786. And he looked at these rocks. He was an alpine explorer. He's probably been out in nature for a long time, and maybe by himself. I don't know. I just made that last part up. But so he's out there and he's just looking at these rocks, and he thought that they looked like these wigs that the French used to wear during his time. And these wigs, this is actually kind of gross. They were smothered with mutton fat, hence the term mutinae, to keep the hair in place. So they didn't have like fun hair gel. Not that hair gels are fun, but
that had to smell awful.
Oh my God. Could you imagine on a hot day with that? You must have had every single dog. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where they had the mutton in their pockets, or Elaine wouldn't eat the mutton. And she was like, she didn't want to be offensive. And she just was like you ever see that episode?
Yes.
Am I the only one?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I know what you're talking about.
You got all the mutton in her pockets basically. And the dogs are chasing her, following her on the way home.
You know what's funny? I heard a different story. I heard that it looked like a sheep laying down.
Yeah.
And that's why it was called sheeprock.
Yeah. And that's
had nothing to do with fat in hair.
Classic misnomer.
Classic. Steve, if you would have read this bullet point, the last sentence in the bullet point says the French term is often incorrectly interpreted as meaning sheeprock.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. So
Yeah.
I was told the wrong story. I wasn't told this more fascinating story about
Just
putting fat in wigs.
putting mutton fat in wigs.
It's a great story.
Great story. It's pretty much as good as it gets. All right.
That's it. We peaked. We're done.
Which is as good as it gets. That's a 1990s reference movie.
Oh,
Jack Nicholson. So
yeah.
there.
Was that 1990s?
Man.
Yeah,
Yes.
a little bit. 99 maybe.
Yeah, probably late 90s.
Was there a sequel? 1997. Was there a sequel to that movie?
I hope not.
Yeah.
Helen Hunt, Jack Nicholson, and the kid from The Sixth Sense.
Oh, Cuba Gooding Jr.
No, the
Greg
kid.
Kinnear. No, I'm just reading.
Oh,
yeah,
he's
I'm not,
oh,
I'm just-
Cuba. Oh,
I
that's
don't
right.
know who the kid was. I moved on. I'm reading the other.
Haley Joel Osment.
Oh, Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt, Greg Kinnear, Cuba Gooding Jr., Skeet Ulrich. Music by Hans Zimmer. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm done reading the credits now.
So the next glacial feature we can talk about. So by the way, there's so many of these features that glaciers make, and we're not going to be able to get to them all in an hour-ish podcast. So just kind of hitting some of the big ones here. So if we didn't mention your favorite glacial feature, give us a shout. Let us know what your favorite glacial feature is. I don't.
Yeah, send us an email. We'll totally do a whole episode on it. How it's done, how it's made.
Well, I don't know. Some of them. I don't know if we could do a whole episode on some of these features.
Stop it. We could stretch this out as long as we have to.
There'll be a fair amount of tangents, but
Oh, as opposed to our normal podcast. Carry on.
all right, that's enough from you, all right, Peterson? All right. These are one of my favorites. I love these features. We're going to talk about cirques. So what a cirque is, it's just like it tends to be like a semicircular feature at the base of these steep walls at the head of a mountain valley. So just imagine you're high up in the alpine environment, you're above the tree line, and it's almost like it's like this like scoop taken out of the mountain. It's like circular, like almost like ice cream scoop. So how that forms is that's just a collection area for ice, and your glacier starts to grow inside the cirque, and that's why it tends to be circular. That's where the term cirque comes from.
I did not know that.
Yeah, like Cirque du Soleil.
Hmm.
It's a circular
Circus.
circus.
No.
A circus. Where does the term circus come from? What's the
Because it's in a ring.
Yeah.
a ring? So okay, then
Yeah, Cirque du
yeah.
Soleil is Circus of the Sun or something.
Cirque.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. So,
But
what ends up happening is it's this low-lying area, and the ice starts collecting in there. And as the ice, as your glacier starts growing over time, it starts carving out that area, and it can actually lead into some other features that we're going to get into. I should probably just jump down to talk about these, but you can get features like horns and arêtes forming as well. So if you've never heard of a horn before, you probably don't realize that you've heard of one. Ever hear of the Matterhorn? The mountain, the Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps?
No, it's a ride in Disney.
Is it?
The Matterhorn? Yeah.
I don't know what the...
I have heard of the Matterhorn.
Yeah, no, I've heard of the Matterhorn, obviously, but the Matterhorn
I
is probably more widely known as a ride at Disney.
No,
which is based
I
off.
think of it as a mountain. What are you talking about? I don't think of Disney when you're talking about the mountain.
All right, please send us
would
comments
use
at the geologyflannelcast.com regarding this. Do you know of the Matterhorn as a Disney ride or as a mountain in the Swiss Alps?
Or I would say, what's a more famous peak, the Matterhorn or the Murderhorn?
I've never heard of the Murderhorn.
Oh, Homer climbs it with his apple.
Oh, shoot.
Simpsons reference?
Sorry. Yes. Yeah, because Abe tried to climb it with somebody else earlier, and Abe like took a bite out of his leg. Or I forget what happened in that episode. Anyway,
so
Abe
okay,
Simpson.
so Cirques. Okay, like we said, we got this. I'm trying to keep ourselves on
Yeah,
track.
no,
right?
go.
All right, so you got this the circular depression at the base of these steep walls in the mountain, and if sometimes you can have multiple cirques within proximity to each other, and what'll happen is the ice starts growing and the ice starts carving out these walls, and these cirques can grow laterally, right? And what can happen over time? They'll move. They'll get bigger. They'll continue to carve out the mountain, and you can get a feature called a horn. This is where the Matterhorn and a lot of, if you ever hear of a mountain, like they have them a lot in the Alps. That's where a lot of this, like the glacial terminology comes from, is in Europe in the Alps. But
Yeah, essentially that's when this science was becoming a science, and that's where it was. So
that's where they discovered evidence for all of we talked about it on one of the past episodes. I'm blanking on the geologist who discovered all this stuff, but just walking around the Alps, and that's how they realized, like, oh my God, there were like ice ages in this whole area. All of the Alps were covered in ice, covered in glaciers. Like this is crazy. Who was that?
I forget too. I know what you're talking about, but
was it Agus? Was it Agus? No. Was it Agassi?
No, he was a tennis player.
Good point.
Maybe he was a geologist. I don't know. You know, I guess geologists need hobbies too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah, but that's why a lot of these names have like French or Swiss or, you know,
German. Yeah.
Yeah, because basically it was, you know, where it was at was in Europe.
So with a horn, it's when your peak has like it's almost like a pyramid type shape, and what it is just kind of like the convergence of these cirques, and the ice is kind of carving out this pyramid type peak sticking up out of sticking up out of the mountains. So
yeah,
like
have you ever seen the beginning of any Paramount picture?
Yeah,
that's that Paramount picture that is essentially an arête.
No, a horn.
Or excuse me, a horn.
We're gonna get to arêtes in a second.
Sorry.
Yeah. Jumping the gun.
What is the name of the mountain in the Paramount picture?
I forget.
It's not the Matterhorn.
No, it's not the Matterhorn, but I want to say it's in the Rockies somewhere. Right?
No, it's not it's not in the Rockies. It's in the Alps.
Ooh.
No.
Oh,
How do you pronounce this one?
Yeah, it's from the Andes.
Is it the Andes?
Yeah. Artsun Raju?
Yeah, there you go. Paramount Pictures got the logo inspiration from.
Yeah, it's from Peru.
All right.
And
so I was closer than you were with the Rockies.
Yeah. From
How about it doesn't look like the Andes? How about
But that is a beautiful looking horn.
Yeah.
Shoo.
But that's the definition of horn. If you want to see a good example of a horn, just watch any movie from Paramount Pictures.
There you go.
And you only got to watch the first like 30 seconds, and then you got your.
Exactly. And sorry, I jumped the gun with arêtes, but that could be our next feature.
Arête is the next feature we're going to talk about, because if the cirques, as they erode out, sometimes they don't just carve out a single peak, a single like pyramid type peak sticking up out of the ground, not well out of the mountains, but sometimes they just kind of carve up this. I guess it's a very like steep, almost like a thin wall. It's called an arête, a very steep ridge line. That's the better term. So sometimes if these ridge lines, they're super steep, you can have like 1,000-foot drop on either side of these ridge lines. And sometimes if they're thin enough, climbers call them knife edges. And so they say like you got to have to traverse across this knife edge, but in reality, it's a glacial arête.
Yes, and I don't know if you've ever seen YouTube videos of climbers climbing on these things. They must have death wishes. That is terrifying.
Perfectly safe. What are you talking about?
No, there's no such thing as that. But a more familiar shape that many people might have seen and not even realized is the U-shaped valley. So typically when you have a valley, if it's carved by a river, it's usually in the shape of a V, or typically, or idealized version of a river valley would be a V shape, but the idealized
an immature river.
Well, yes, and idealized shape of a glacial valley is a U. And if you've ever been in upstate New York or anywhere in Canada, the Scandinavian countries, like it's legit. It's like a big giant. Like a gigantic half pipe.
That's a great way to describe it. A giant half pipe with 1,000-foot walls on either side, 2,000-foot walls on either side.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a big, huge, steep drop, a nice round curve into a flat portion, into the other curve, and then right up the other steep side of it. So
that was a great definition of a U shape, Steve.
Thanks.
Great.
Yeah.
Great explanation.
Next week, we'll be talking about S's.
Classic U-shaped valley, Yosemite Valley. Yosemite Valley is all carved out by glaciers.
Oh.
So, yeah. So real fast before we finish, I want to go back to cirques real fast. All right. What they're really important, man. A lot of stuff comes from cirques.
But that was like 2 features ago. Carry on.
Yeah. Well, there's something called a tarn, and that's a lake that forms in a cirque. So you have the circular type amphitheater, like the depression at the base of the peaks, and then once the ice melts away, you can have a lake that's left behind. That's called a tarn.
Yeah, and it almost looks like a volcanic lake.
It kind of does from the one picture that we were looking at.
No, I mean, but usually. It's
not volcanic, but
it's not volcanic, but usually there's one side that's been eroded down that would have let the ice kind of follow its path down.
Yeah. And then next is my personal favorite, Paternoster Lakes. These are one of my favorite glacial features.
First of all, that's like the 3rd personal favorite of yours.
No. Jesse's got all the personal favorites. I never talk about my personal favorites. Jesse likes too much stuff.
He's a very likable guy.
I try and squeeze the most lemonade out of the lemons of life.
That's a perfect description of it. All right, so Paranoister Lakes.
Yeah, Paternoster.
Paternoster. Sorry.
Which you, as a Catholic school from K to 12, should know that.
Well, I didn't call them. I called them rosaries. I didn't call them paternosters.
You weren't taught, and I assumed you learned everything in Latin. I didn't.
No, I'm not that old. Thank you.
So what a Paternoster Lake is, or Paternoster Lakes, plural. I don't know, you can't just have one lake. It's a series of lakes in the Glacial Valley. And the lakes are connected by a stream. So the name comes because it, like what Jesse just said, it resembles like a rosary, right? You have like, the beads, and it's all connected by a string, or and
whatever.
yeah, I guess that's it. I don't have to expand on that. It's just, that's
it's like
what
kind
it
of
looked
like a pearl necklace or a rosary, like where you have a bead and then a thin line or chain or string, and then another bead and then a thin line. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's where let's see, the name Paternoster comes from. It's I guess it's another name for the Lord's Prayer from. It's from
Latin.
Latin. Yeah, thank you. Something like that. One of those.
One of those old dead languages.
Something that the back in the day. So Paternoster Lakes are really cool. I remember one time I was out on a vacation out in Glacier National Park, Montana, and I remember we did this hike up to the top of it's called Grinnell Glacier, and looking down in the valley, and it was just like, I remember just seeing that, like, holy crap, look at that Paternoster Lake. It was really cool. All these lakes all connected by a stream and cool stuff. So that's why I have a personal connection with Paternoster Lakes. So
did whoever you were with call you a nerd and push you down?
That happens every day of my life. I got a wedgie actually on the top of this glacier.
They somehow found a toilet to give you a toilet.
All right. So moving on to more, let's see. This is an erosional feature of a glacier. These things are called fjords.
Love it. That's, yeah.
Jesse, have you seen a fjord in real life?
Have I seen a fjord in real life?
Iceland?
I was wondering your Iceland trip if you ever.
I'm trying. That's why I was trying to think. I assume I did. I don't know. It was a while ago at this point.
And there is a difference between a fjord and a fjord.
Oh, so
and I always forget them.
Fjords are just smaller. I don't think they're as deep.
Huh.
So
I could say fjord all day, every day.
So you have, here's a lot of people don't realize this. There's a term called a fjord, and there's a term called a fjord. So fjord, F-J-O-R-D, and fjord, F-J-A-R-D.
Yeah. And basically, it's your U-shaped valley, but it's flooded, usually by the ocean.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And these fjords are really, really deep. And it's all just kind of carved out by this glacier moving down the valley. Yeah.
And honestly, you see some of these pictures of some of them. It looks like something out of like the Lord of the, like it looks fantastical, like out of Lord of the Rings, or like oh, that can't be on planet Earth. Like, no, it is. It's that gorgeous and it's that cool.
So a fjord, it's very similar. It's a rocky inlet of the sea, but it's usually found along relatively low-lying coasts. So you don't have like the topography that you would have with a fjord.
There you go.
So,
yeah,
I knew
I've seen fjords.
They have them up in Maine.
Yeah.
Acadia National Park.
Or that
is that a fjord or a fjord? Because I think some people say it's a fjord.
Yeah.
When I think of fjord, I think of like Norway.
Norway. Yeah. Exactly. The one spot where all the base jumpers jump off of.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy.
That's not the first thing that came to my mind, but
it's the first. There's this one spot in Norway. I guess they have this it's almost like a natural diving board, and you jump off the fjord, and the base jumpers, they love it. That's cool. Not for me, but that's cool.
No thanks.
All right, so we're talking about all these erosional features, and all that eroded stuff has to go somewhere, right? It doesn't just disappear. It doesn't, rock doesn't sublimate.
Mass cannot be created nor destroyed.
How cool would it be if rocks could sublimate? But they don't. So they get ground up, and then that stuff has to go somewhere, right?
Yes. I was Never mind. I was going to go off on another tangent, but yes, the stuff has to go somewhere. And so usually you get all this material that like when this glacier's moving down the valley, it starts picking up all this stuff, right? It's just a giant bulldozer moving down the valley, and it's picking up all this crap, boulders.
Yeah, we're saying giant, like it's picking up, like it's breaking off chunks of rock like the size of houses.
Yeah,
like single family homes and like
it's
buildings
carving out mountain valleys. It's literally not tunneling out, but it's carving out mountain valleys. So there's a lot of rock that's associated with the stuff, and it gets stuck in the ice. There's a lot of rock in the ice. So what happens is when the glacier starts melting, so the water just kind of flows downhill, right? But it also brings with it all of the sediment that the glacier had originally kind of pushed down. And so we get these things called outwash, and it's a sediment it's deposited past, like you could say the toe of the glacier. All right. It's beyond the terminal margin of the ice. And the thing with glacial outwash is that the sediment there is poorly sorted. And so what that means is that you just Mother Nature doesn't kind of filter the stuff out. It's just this dump of random sediment, all sorts of sizes.
For the engineers listening, it's well graded.
Oh, that's right. They do say that. Yeah.
Blows my mind. It gets me so angry. But you carry on.
Get into some some environments on Earth where Mother Nature, these natural processes, they kind of I don't want to say, I'm saying filter out the sand or filter out the sediments. So it's all one size, but what's a better word for that?
Sort it.
Sort. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's why the geologist term makes so much more sense.
Yeah. Right.
Than poorly graded.
There's certain features on Earth that through natural processes you'll get nothing but sediment of all of the same size, like sand dunes, for example.
Right. So the energy of the system can only carry a certain size grain. Yes. So the energy of the water is only capable of carrying a grain of such diameter. So the water, if it's flowing at a constant rate, can only transport sediments of a certain grain size.
And that's why sand dunes tend to be all the same, very, very, very close to the same grain size, is because it's being transported by wind. And wind doesn't have the energy that like a river would have, where it could just bring a lot more.
Yeah. Wind doesn't have the density.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or the usually the variability too. Like in a river, you can have spots where it's high velocity, spots where it's low velocity, a lot more. Well, yeah. I guess actually the density plays more of a factor.
Should we mention here outwashes are the main place you see braided streams?
Ooh.
One of the main places, because you have a variability in flow. So during the winter months, you don't have much outwash because everything freezes. And then during the spring and the summer, everything melts. And so you get these pulses of water. You have a ton of sediment just from the glacier grinding and pushing it down into the outwash. And then you have this variability in discharge and flow. And it creates these braided systems.
Yeah, distributary.
And a lot of times these braided systems tend to be at a higher gradient too. So you get a steeper gradient and basically just a crap ton of sediment involved with it as well. And you tend to get, and so
another SI unit,
a crap ton. Yes. One master crap ton. Yes. So, an outwash, sometimes they call them outwash planes, and it's just it's like a big apron of sand, or I shouldn't say sand because that's not correct at all. It's a big apron of sediment. It's just random size sediment, poorly sorted, just everything. Boulder, I don't know about boulders, but like coarse gravel, sand, silt, and clay. It's the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, it's just the glacier vomiting. Blah.
Yeah, blah. That's it. That's exactly what it is. It's the glacier goes blah and just drops all that sediment out. Well, speaking about the next term we want to talk about, speaking of the glacier going blah, I'm done. There's a couple other ways the glacier can make that that noise and that action. And the one thing I want to talk about now is moraines. Now, these things are cool. These are my glaciers. Moraines are pretty cool. They're my second favorite glacial feature.
Jeez. Carry on.
That might have been the dorkiest thing I've said all week, but
or at least today.
My second favorite glacial feature. It's moraines. All right. So moraines it's a depositional feature that's composed of glacially derived sediment, and there's a lot of different types of moraines. And I guess to give you like a quick little 10-second definition of what a moraine is, it's a pile of sediment. They tend to be linear piles, kind of. They tend to be like linear piles of sediment.
Yeah, or curvilinear. Yeah.
Yeah, that the glacier deposits as it's and it's associated with some type of movement of the glacier. And these moraines are really important because this is how we figured out how far the glaciers have moved in the past. So like if you ever see like a diagram of like, oh, during the last ice age, like the ice came down like this far until like, New Jersey and Pennsylvania or whatever you're dealing with. The reason that they know that is because geologists have found a feature called a terminal moraine.
Yeah.
So
essentially the bulldozer has to stop somewhere.
Yeah. It doesn't go forever. And yeah, exactly. So you have a bulldozer just pushing a pile of sediment along, it stops. And what happens when the bulldozer just starts going in reverse? It leaves that pile behind and just the bulldozer moves away. And that's a type of end moraine. There's a couple different types of moraines, but the first type of moraines we'll talk about are end moraines. So this would be the terminal moraine. That's the type of end moraine. And that's the farthest advance of a glacial episode. The glacier or the bulldozer is coming down and it hit that furthest point that it moves.
Yeah. Think about like a snowplow. A snowplow can push snow halfway up your driveway on day one. On day two, it pushes it a little bit further. On day three, it pushes a little bit further. At some point, the snowplow is going to push it to the furthest extent possible, and then that's it. And all the other times that snowplow stopped, all that evidence is removed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where it stopped on day one or hour one or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
All the only evidence that's left behind is that very last push of where that snowplow went. So that's what a terminal moraine kind of is.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's the furthest extent. It's how far that's the farthest that it traveled from its. Let's just leave it at that before I get myself in trouble. So now the glacier, it reached that terminus or that maximum point. Now it's melting and it's receding back. It's moving backwards, right? So it leaves behind things called recessional moraines. So these form at the glacial front during a temporary halt in recession or a re-advance of ice. So let's just say the ice extends to the terminal point, and then it starts coming back. But then you get another pulse of growth. Now this next pulse of growth doesn't go all the way to the terminal moraine. It goes a little bit farther, but not as far as it went in the past. And that's what causes these recessional moraines. So the one thing I always forget to think about, and it's very important that you think about this, is that these glaciers aren't moving in this one single push, like say it comes from the north and it pushes south, just one single push. Oh, okay, cool. We hit the terminus. This is as far as we're going to go now. It's going to be one single push back as the whole thing's melting. That's not how it works. These things tend to get pulses. All right. It might go up a little, up, start inching up and come back a little bit, inch up a little more, come back a little bit. And that's just I think a lot of times in geology, when you're studying this stuff, you kind of forget about this, is that a lot of the stuff works in pulses. And the more you study it, the more you realize it's just not one single push of growth. So that's where like the recessional moraines come in. It's just, like I said, it's either like a temporary halt or it's this slight re-advance of ice during a period of general recession. So in the long you're having a net loss of ice, but sometimes it might push up a little bit and then come back. It might push up and then come back even more.
Yeah.
So that's what recessional.
You guys know an example of a very good example of an end moraine?
I feel like you're gonna tell us one.
You gonna drop a knowledge bomb?
Yeah.
Long Island.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course.
Long Island is a terminal moraine.
That's
That's the furthest extent of the last glaciation. That's where all those glaciers in New York and Canada kind of just stopped and just like, yeah. So Long Island is just a glacier vomit.
So
and also Nantucket Island and Martha's Vineyard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those are
they're all connected.
Moraines.
They're all
So there was
they're not connected. Excuse me, I should have said that, but they're all in line with each other. That's what I meant to say.
There's a study that came. I think it came out today. I read it today. So, nope. Wait, nope. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong tab. Too many tabs.
I'll take a tab.
Yeah,
if you want something, pal, you got to pay for
it. I closed it. It came out recently. Let's just pretend it came out today. There were some researchers that were using. They used all sorts of silly things, but high resolution imagery from the Mars High Rise orbiter to identify moraines on Mars, and they cataloged at least what they think are 20 major phases of glaciation or ice ages on Mars.
Oh, do they correlate with Earth? I guess they can't really date them, can they?
Yeah, well, they do they've got they think they're phased at like 300,000 years, which it doesn't necessarily make too much sense.
Well, is Milenkovic
Milenkovic will be different. Yeah, Milenkovic will be different from Mars because they have a different tilt and different orbit. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought initially. I was like, oh, it doesn't line up with the 100 or 400,000 year or the 40,000 year.
So the ice ages on Earth are related to these things called Milenkovic cycles, and it has to do with the tilt and the wobble of the Earth. Basically, we did a whole episode. No orbit, eccentricity. We did a whole episode years ago on Milenkovic. The first push of the Flannelcast.
So
back in the teens.
Anyway, that's my story about the strong island of Mars.
Yeah, Milenkovic Cycles, episode 34.
34. That was almost right before
2015. Yeah.
2015. All right, so let's keep on moving on. We're getting close to finishing up the features here. All right, the last end moraine, we can talk about lateral moraines. And so that's kind of on the edge, or like what they say, like the side margin of a mountain glacier, of an alpine glacier. So I always kind of these glaciers, as they're like coming down the valleys, it looks like tongues of ice. And so the lateral moraines are just on the edge of that. All right. So if the glacier is moving to the south, the lateral moraines would be on the east and west side of that tongue moving towards the south. Does that make sense?
Yes?
But it's all oriented towards the south. I'm really digging myself a hole right here. It's on the sides of the glacier. Let's just leave it at that. All right. Those are known as lateral moraines. So the next category are called ground moraines. And so with the ground moraines, the first one we have listed here is called a medial moraine. So the ice is moving downhill. We talked about this. Gravity's moving the ice downhill. And what happens is these glaciers can flow into each other and they can join up. And so a medial moraine is when two lateral moraines join together. So you have two tongues of ice, like two glaciers coming together. They're joining up, but on each glacier, there's a lateral moraine. And now when the two glaciers join together, that lateral moraine of each glacier is no longer in the middle. I'm sorry, it's no longer on the edge, the lateral edges. It's now in the middle. And so that's a medial moraine. So it's a moraine that's like, it just looks like it's right in the middle.
So I'm going to relate this back to food and think of your glacier coming down the mountain as a chipwich, right?
I like chipwiches.
You got your chocolate chip cookie on one side, you got your chocolate chip cookie on the other side. Those are your rocks that are being eroded. And then you have your ice cream in the middle, which is your glacier. Now, medial moraine would be when two chipwiches come together. So now you have chocolate chip cookie, ice cream, chocolate chip cookie, ice cream, chocolate chip cookie.
That is chipwich right there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cookies and ice creams.
Yeah, exactly. I knew I piqued your interest. So the lateral moraines is essentially the chocolate chip cookie part, the rock and debris that's being eroded. But as those two things come together, you now have a big giant line right down the middle, hence medial.
That might be the smartest thing you've ever said in a not really kind of way.
What can I say?
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while.
You know? Exactly.
All right. So that's just a quick run through on moraines. Pretty cool feature. There is, I want to say, I believe it's Nantucket or Martha's. I think it's Martha's Vineyard, actually, now I think about it.
Does it rhyme with Nantucket?
No, or a man from, no, it has nothing to do with a man from Nantucket. Right. And there's a vodka distillery, and they claim that they make like this like super pure vodka. So it's like super awesome vodka because the water is filtered through the moraine sediment, or there's something along the lines of that. Isn't there another vodka company that uses water from
I think like
glaciers?
I think there's a lot actually.
Yeah.
Finlandia, I think Goose Creek does. I think there's actually a lot.
Yeah, I feel like there's one where they like get it from icebergs, though, right? Isn't there one?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah. But anyway, this one distillery, vodka distillery in, like I said, I think it's Martha's Vineyard. They say that because they use this water that's filtered through the moraine sediment, and they say it's like, I don't know, the best water ever. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Whatevs.
Whatevs. All right, Cames and Kettles. Let's talk about these guys.
Now we're talking.
Cames and Kettles, baby. They're usually found together. They're kind of like, they're kind of a package deal. A came is so this is another depositional feature, by the way, from a glacier. A came is a mound-like hill, and it has stratified sand and gravel in it. And it comes from the accumulation of sediment within cavities within the ice of the glacier or depressions within the ice surface. So basically sediment fills in those cavities or that depression on the surface of the ice. But the main thing with cames is that the sediment is stratified inside it. And then kettles are kind of, they're not mounds, they're circular depressions. And what happens is with kettles, it forms as your ice is melting and calving. And what happens is isolated block of ice falls off. And you get these like huge blocks of ice just kind of sitting on the ground. And when they melt, it forms a lake. That's how big these blocks of ice are. So, and this is kind of the reason.
So kettles are usually called kettle lakes.
Kettle lakes. Yeah. And this has to do with why the state of Minnesota is known as the land of 1,000 lakes.
Which is where the Los Angeles Lakers come from.
Yeah.
They came from Minnesota?
Yeah, they were the Minnesota Lakers.
That's why
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I don't really follow basketball that much, but how about that? That makes more sense. I always wondered, like,
yep, they were the Minnesota Lakers. They moved to Los Angeles and they kept the Lakers name, which doesn't really correlate, but
yes.
I just want to mention something about kettles too. There's a feature. So oftentimes on the surface of the glacier, you'll get pooled meltwater. And so you'll have these like super glacial lakes, they're called, that are lakes on the surface of the glacier. And if there's a crevasse that opens up or a crack, the water will
I believe it's
drain.
pronounced stretch mark.
the stretch marks, the crevasse, the crevice.
Can you say crevice on glacier? The crevice on the glacier.
Yeah,
See, I feel like crevice is worse than stretch mark.
Yeah, the crevasse on the glacier. The water from that glacial lake will drain, basically just shoot down, and it creates this. It's almost like a fire hose.
It's like a pressure washer.
Yeah. And so it'll drill down through the glacier and just hit the bedrock or hit the rock below it. And so you can get these features called potholes that can then fill with water. And so they're similar to a kettle lake in that sense. But one of the largest ones ever found is in northeastern Pennsylvania in the town of Archibald. It's called the Archibald Pothole. It's a state park. And so
I've never been there, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, shout out to my father-in-law who's from there and was.
Have you been there?
Told me about it. No, I should have. I've been to Archibald a number of times, and I've never been up that. I've never seen it, but apparently, there's an interesting story about how the person who found it. But there's apparently one that is nearby as well. But it's filled with garbage right now. They just used it as a dump because it's just.
Well, here's a hole. Let's fill it.
But speaking of when I was in Iceland, it was sort of the year. Was it the year after or 2 years after Eyjafjallajökull erupted? And so we were up on a glacier and. When you got up towards it's receding like every glacier on Earth, or most glaciers on Earth. But so when we were hiking up to the edge to hike up onto the glacier, you could see these mounds of sediment, and they were all black because of all the ash, and they were just these like almost like pillars or these little mounds, but they're from these. When it drains like that, they're called moulins. So these moulins draining, and so all the sediment gets flushed down that hole too. So it piles up. If it doesn't drill into the bedrock and form a pothole, you're just going to pile up sediment. So you get these like little piles of sediment. So it was an interesting little thing to sort of see in action.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. I gotta get to Iceland one of these days.
Yeah, well, I'll get the vaccine and we'll go together.
Sounds good. Fun little. I guess it's not a glacial feature, but a fun little thing when we're on the topic of Iceland. I really like the topic of Jakula. I can't pronounce them. Jakulops. You know about these?
No. I just want to hear you try and pronounce it.
Jakulhops. It's anyways, what it is you get these in Iceland, you get these volcanoes that are covered by glaciers. And
Jokuls?
Is that how you pronounce it?
I think so. Yeah, like Eyjafjallajökull.
Here's the how do you pronounce that? Jakulops. Anyways, it's
Jokulap.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's you get these volcanoes in Iceland are they're covered in ice. They're covered by glaciers, and when the volcano melts, when the volcano erupts, it tends to be a little hot, a little warm. And so it melts the glacier that's covering the volcano, and you get this like massive flood coming off of the volcano.
Yeah. And there's videos. So Jökull, which I think is what you're like J umlaut, the O with the umlaut Kull.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Jökull. It means glacier. It
Okay.
translates as glacier.
Ah.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, that's what's interesting about the Icelandic language is like they don't take a word from a foreign language and just accept it. Like they'll come up with their own new word for like computer.
Yeah.
Like they make a new word and that becomes the new word in their vocabulary. Instead of just saying computer, like we say taco or
taco
Schadenfreude or whatever, like,
And so volcano is Edfjall. I'm not going to get it right because
have any Icelandic listeners out there, I would love for, record us
trying to
an MP
because this is a little so fjall FJALL. Fjall is mountain and Ed is fire. So Edfjall is fire mountain.
Oh,
and so Jökull is a glacier. And so usually I have fit Jökull is like fire mountain with the name of whatever.
Yeah.
But that's so you can look at videos when Jökull erupted of these insane outwashes as it's erupting under the glacier. So you're just melting all of this water. Mm-hmm. And so you have these crazy outwash floods from that eruption.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mark, one of our patrons, asked us what the Icelandic word for taco is.
Google Translate can answer that very quickly for you.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's. According to Google Translate, it is. I hope I got the pronunciation right. Taco.
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 So,
yes.
All right, we got.
Come on.
All right, we got two features left for this glacial stuff here. So at least that we're covering. There's more than this, but there's stuff I left out for this, but for time's sake, we're just it's our podcast. We'll talk about whatever we want, So Eskers made the cut. Eskers are really cool. They I don't know if they're my second or third favorite glacial feature.
Come on.
They're crazy looking. Eskers on the surface of the earth. They look like these like curvilinear mounds. They're elongated and they're kind of snake-like. It looks like a topographic snake. And
it's like the opposite of a river. If a river was cutting down, the Eskers kind of popping up.
Well, guess where the Eskers come from?
What?
Rivers?
Eskers come from rivers.
What?
In tunnels within the glaciers.
Crazy.
Right.
This is like our understanding of the contact between glaciers and the bedrock or the earth is really poorly understood.
Yeah.
And we
keep putting people there and they keep dying.
Just go stand there in front of the glacier. Tell me what you see.
It's coming right for me.
Because your as you go down into a glacier, your temperature increases because from pressure. And so right at that contact, there's a lot of thought that it's pretty dynamic in that you get some meltwater forming. And so why you actually get these rivers is sort of unknown, unless you've got an answer for me.
I don't have an answer.
Ah, man. I was really, I thought you were going to show me up and be like, actually.
Ice 9 is actually water.
Yeah, this is why we get rivers.
Yeah. But what's cool about Eskers is honestly, most of like the sand and gravel places that supply sand and gravel for construction basically are mining Eskers.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah. Because basically Mother Nature went ahead and sorted it all by size for us because
she has everything or you mean she graded it? I can't say that because people are going to be like, what? She does grade the surface as well, but in a different way.
Yes. So no, sorted.
Took
all these individual grains and sorted them into their size appropriate bins. And so basically the velocity of the water, the river that was under the river could only hold grains of certain sizes. So that river tended to be of the same velocity over and over and over and over and over again. So the grains tend to be the same exact size. So, sand and gravel companies would just essentially mine them because Mother Nature already did it for them. They don't have to break the rock. They don't have to sort it. They don't have to grind it. Like, it's just like dig a hole and here you go. Here's all your sand grains, or here's all your gravel, or here's all your whatever.
That makes sense. I know one of the big suppliers of sand is out of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, lots of
sand.
eskers in Wisconsin, I'd imagine.
Yeah. And
it's like ground zero for the last glacial pulse. The Wisconsin Ice Age.
There you go.
Oh, it's literally named after it.
It's literally named after the state. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, should we have talked about the last 5? I guess we don't have time now. The last 5 glacial pulses during the Pleistocene.
You could name them.
Yeah.
It's there's you put me on the spot here. It's the Wisconsin, Illinois, Kansas, and Nebraska. There's 4. Yeah, did I say 5?
Yeah.
WIK. Yeah.
Here's a fun fact. I should give a shout out. My little story about Mars. The Mars Ice Age was passed along to me by a friend of the podcast, Patreon on the podcast, Vince. So shout out to Vince.
Thanks, Vince.
But the last glacial period was the Wisconsin, right? Was that the last?
Yeah, that was the last one. Yeah.
There is
18,000 years ago, right?
Yeah,
that was when it hit its maximum. Yeah,
it hit maximum, and then it's been retreating. And so the main ice sheet that covered North America was called the Laurentide ice sheet. Do you know there is a remnant still of it today?
Where at?
It is in Baffin Island, up in Nunavut, Canada.
So there's a part of the ice that just never melted from the last ice age.
It's shrunk, and there's a little tiny.
But I should say the North American sheet that covered like Canada and the United States.
Yeah, it's called the Barnes Ice Cap. It's still there, hanging out on Baffin Island. Which, if you're picturing North America, the Hudson Bay up in Canada, the big bay. Baffin is the major island north of Hudson Bay.
Cool.
It's up there a ways.
It's essentially between Hudson Bay and Greenland,
North Pole.
But yeah, if you look
at getting up there, yeah.
If you look at a picture of Baffin Island, you'll see like dead center. There's just a little patch of ice, and that's the ice cap right there.
We should have done this podcast from there. We should have gone for
Barnes.
Done this podcast on the Barnes ice sheet or glacier, I guess you'd call it. How big is it? Do we know?
The ice cap still?
Yeah, what's left now? Yeah.
It's 2,300 square miles, so it's significant-ish. It's like those things when you get up into those parts of Canada, like everything's huge and you don't realize how big.
Yeah, that's definitely bigger than my backyard.
Yeah. Yeah, like we couldn't cross that in a day.
Not with that kind of attitude.
No, that's true. We've done some good hikes before.
We just need some supersonic snowmobiles.
No, we got to get the kites, the ski kites. That's set up. Yeah,
I used to sell kites on the boardwalk as a kid.
See, there we are. It'll be no different from many of our winter backpack trips.
Yes. Someone will lose a toe, and we might all die. Sounds good.
So this actually goes along with the topic of glaciers. They used to do. I only went on one of these trips, but
me too. I only went on one.
One and done with this thing. Jeez, oh knees. Jesse every winter would go on a winter backpacking trip, and I think he was just trying to kill his friends off.
Yeah,
and it was always Jesse got frostbite one year, right? Or was it frost nip? Right?
Frost nip. It's still. Nip. Like I don't have much feeling on the side of that foot, but
I just remember the one night I went with you guys, it dipped down to about 12 degrees. We were camping out in a lean-to on the Appalachian Trail. And I just remember somebody was shivering in their like quote bunk, because it's the bunks are, there's not that actual, it's just a piece of plywood you're basically sleeping on, and you could actually feel like the person shaking on that bunk there. It was a fun experience. It was really, really cold. I remember that. I remember we couldn't get a fire started either because there was too much snow. But all right, so the last topic, or the final feature we'll talk about here, are called drumlins. Now these are pretty cool. This is probably like my fourth favorite of the of the glacial depositional features here. So think of drumlins are these elongated features. They're parallel to the direction of ice flow. And when you're thinking about the shape of a drumlin, think about an inverted spoon. It's like there's like the side that you sip your soup from. Turn it upside down, okay? And on that side, with your inverted spoon, the steep side is pointing to where the ice came from, and the shallow side is pointing down in the direction of ice flow. So like, for example,
so it's almost like the opposite of the Roche Mutinae.
It's the opposite. Yeah, exactly. So like if you're in North America, we know that during the last ice age, the ice moved towards the south. So the steep side would be pointing towards the north, and the shallow side, the less steep side, would be pointing towards the south. So drumlins can give you information on the direction that the ice was moving in when they were formed. And there you have it. There is our podcast on glaciers and glacial features.
Woo!
I hope everyone enjoyed it.
I know I did.
I thought you were going to say, I'm on the fence. I don't know if I enjoyed that one.
No, I really did. And again, please leave us a message on geologyflannelcast.com. Become a Patreon member. Check us out on the Insta, if you will, as the kids say it these days. Check us out on Facebook. I apologize. I became a little lax and missed a few episodes to post, so I apologize for that. But our last 3 Cole episodes are up, so check us out on Facebook. And it's tell a loved one February for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Yeah.
Everyone you love, tell them about the Flannelcast.
Yep.
Everyone.
I love it.
So yeah, we're on YouTube. If you want to watch the video podcasts on YouTube.
Yeah, and subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yeah, subscribe to us. That helps. Like us, leave a comment. Love talking to you guys. What else? So if you have any burning geology questions that you'd like to have answered on a future show, go to geologyflannelcast.com. Send them over. Click on listener questions, and every once in a while we'll do a listener questions episode where we just answer your burning questions in geology. Also, if you'd like to support the Flannelcast, like I said, we have a Patreon account for monthly subscription to the podcast. There's different tiers. You get some fun stuff. We always have a bunch of Patreon friends hanging out with us for the live recordings. We do a hangout before and hangout after. It's a pretty good time, pretty fun. Also, another way to help out the podcast is we have some merch up. If you're interested in getting some Flannelcast merch, we got some stickers. We got the Geology Flannelcast coffee mugs.
I have a very wrinkled t-shirt. I apologize for the wrinkleness. Chris already yelled at me for not ironing it, hanging up behind me.
Yeah.
I had it up, and then I actually wore it, and then I pull it out of the laundry to hang it up again today. So I apologize.
So anyways, all that stuff on geologyflannelcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter at GeoFlannelcast. And Steve already said Facebook. We got an Insta. We said that already. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Tell a friend.
Tell a friend. So thanks everyone so much for hanging out this week. This was a fun one. Really enjoyed talking about glaciers. And we'll be back with another interesting topic about geology next week. So take care. As Steve says, brush your hair, stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys in 7 days.
See ya.
Bye.